Hey friends, on the latest 83 weeks, Eric broke down all the news about a potential sale for WWE. Plus, he gave us 2 bonus episodes of Strictly Business this week, all about what's going down with Vince McMahon and the #1 wrestling company in the world. You are about to get an opportunity to ask him anything you would like on that topic and anything else you want. This is After 83 Weeks. I'm Christy Olson, and all my friends are here tonight. Always good to see you guys, Adam, Steve, George, and of course, WWE Hall of Famer and thought leader, shall we say, in the current world of pro wrestling news, Eric Bischoff. How you doing tonight?
I'm feeling invigorated.
Yeah.
I haven't felt invigorated in a long time.
Well, perhaps it's because you've spent so much of this week on the air, kind of conjecturing about what's going down with WWE, Vince McMahon. I want to thank you on behalf of the whole ad-free shows family for all of this commentary we've gotten from you this week. And I want to kick this off by asking you, as all this news unravels so quickly every day, there's something new. Has your opinion or viewpoint changed on anything in particular that we've heard you talk about this week? Anything you want to say, hey, actually, now it's looking this way?
No, I came out very early on and said my bet is that it's going to be a move to take the company private. And I still believe that. Whether it's with Endeavor or some other third-party investment, whatever the strategy is, and there's a million things we could speculate about. I don't like to speculate too much, but I still believe the ultimate play here will be for Vince to take the company private. That's what we'll be talking about when the smoke's cleared, and everybody the Dave Meltzer talking about Disney and all the other stuff that's floating. When the smoke is cleared, WWE will be a privately held company. That's my prediction, and I haven't changed it.
Do you have thoughts about how? Oh yeah, go ahead, Adam.
No, so what would prompt this, right? Because WWE has been a publicly traded entity for, the better part of like 2 decades now. What would necessitate that if you're Vince McMahon?
It's not necessarily necessary. It's the same reason a lot of publicly held companies are taken private. It's not new. It happens frequently. And there's different reasons for different companies and the people that take them private. I said, again, early on, there's 2 scenarios. One is WWE is going to get sold to Comcast or Disney or somebody else. Just an outright a merger and acquisition, or an acquisition, not even a merger, an acquisition. Or Vince is coming back and is going to make a play to take the company private. That was my macro kind of big picture analysis going in. It's either going to be a sale or it'll be taken private. And I'm more and more convinced the play is to take it private. And why? Why would you want to take a company private? There's a lot of financial reasons why, but also, being a publicly held company brings with it a tremendous amount of limitations. Operating a publicly held company is a lot different than operating a private company. There's a lot of reasons. I couldn't begin to try to read into what Vince McMahon may be thinking or what his goals may be, but there's a lot of good reasons to take the company private.
He would need some help to do that, right? Gathering the finances, etc. Not necessarily.
Maybe not. How much would it cost?
If the market cap
we're
is
hearing like 6
billion. If the market cap's $6 billion, you usually have to go 10 or 20% over that, roughly. Am I making that up?
I think it'd be more.
Because you're buying out shareholders, so you have to give shareholders value to take their shares away.
I don't want to get into the weeds that much on this show. I will on the next 83 weeks go into a lot more detail as to why I feel the way I feel.
Mm-hmm.
But it's fairly complicated, and I don't think and it would take some time, and this isn't the right show to do it on because we don't have that much time. And I'm not doing this as a tease, but there's a lot of Shakespeare going on, press releases, leaks, it's just a lot of Shakespeare and a lot of smokescreen. And by the way, none of it's illegal or unethical. It happens all the time. But this is as much Shakespeare and politics and Sun Tzu art of war than it is anything else. And the speculation from people that are out there in the wrestling media, none of them have any real knowledge or information. The only knowledge and information they have is what's been spoon-fed to them for a reason.
Well, you dropped some knowledge and information about your friend from Comcast who indicated to you that Comcast were still interested in buying Warner Brothers. Is that right?
Let me correct you there.
Sure.
Christy. I didn't say I had a friend at Comcast. I said I had a friend in Hollywood who's in the film industry that kind of has his ear to the ground, as a lot of people at high levels do in Hollywood. It's a very interesting world. But my friend does not work for Comcast.
Okay.
But yeah, the rumor amongst the his peers at his level in Hollywood, and some of it is public knowledge. Comcast was interested in Warner Brothers Discovery was interested in Discovery before the merger. They're still interested. Only now Discovery owns Time Warner. And oh, by the way, they're cutting costs like crazy. Why would they do that? Obviously to save money, but they might also do it to make the valuation of the company more attractive because there's less operating expense, which increases the EBITDA, earnings before interest and depreciation. So it could be, but we won't know. It's speculation, but it's speculation, at least for me, based on a little bit of legitimate information.
Did you think that any of the rumors were true at all? There were obviously a lot of news coming in the last 48 hours, because it feels like there was everything was kind of happening all at once. And I think at some point in my mind, I'm like, wait, I don't think you can make a sale that quickly, or can you? I don't know.
You can't.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I was like, why is everybody so quick to jump to this conclusion? Like, he just came back, kind of took over just today. Like, I don't think that there's so many more things that have to go on before even making a sale official.
Look, you could go back and listen to on Strictly Business a week or so ago when I predicted that there's only about a 20% chance that Vince McMahon would come back, and in which case I was clearly wrong. But I did discuss why I think that 20% was a possibility. And
you were 20% right.
Yeah. But one of the things I also predicted that if there was a sale, somebody asked me, I think John Alba asked me when I made the prediction, and you have to go back to Strictly Business to hear what I said, because I don't remember it word for word. But essentially I said, even if there is a transaction, it will probably be before the end of 2023 before it's consummated, because it just takes time. There's diligence involved, and that shit takes time. And I say that because when Fusion Media, myself, was attempting to buy WCW from Turner Broadcasting, which again was another publicly held company, so that transaction it wasn't like selling a used car. Certain things have to happen in a certain order and under certain circumstances. That due diligence took like 3 months or 4 months before we even got through the due diligence portion of it. And you still have negotiation, because a letter of intent isn't necessarily an agreement. It's an agreement to work on an agreement is what it really boils down to. And it takes time.
So when all these I don't want to say news, but when all these headlines come out, is this pretty much you? Hello? Yeah, what time? All right, I'll be ready.
Was that John Alba on the phone? You got to clarify.
Actually, it's the opposite of that, because I love talking about this stuff. It's fascinating to me. I think this is the most interesting and fascinating time that I've lived through when it comes to media, since I've been in media or been a professional in the industry. I think it's fucking fascinating. The only thing that's close to it in my mind was, and still is, the Musk Twitter move. And there again, here's a private individual, that went in and bought a public company and took it private. Why would he do that? Because he felt like he wanted to make the changes that he felt needed to change in order to grow and build a brand. And being a publicly held company prevented that. So Musk put together the money, most of it his own, bought a public company. Shareholders got $54 and some change. They're happy. He's going to take the company. He took the company private, and now he's going to build it back up and probably take it public at some point.
Well, another aspect of all of this here, this is a question that comes from ex-con. Stephanie stepping down made me believe that it was sold to the Saudis. You obviously know Stephanie pretty well and have worked with her, Eric. What does her stepping down say to you?
Doesn't say anything to me because I think this is all Shakespeare. I think this is all part of pretty well thought out plan.
Oh.
It surprised me. You know, my initial reaction was, wow, there must be something more to this story than meets the eye. There must be more palace intrigue. But after, you know, some thought and some discussion I had with people that are really knowledgeable in this world, I don't know, but I don't think anything is a coincidence right now. I think everything that we're learning, whether it's in a press release or anything else, is all carefully constructed.
But we want to believe so badly that there's some kind of drama going on behind the scenes.
Oh, and there may be.
Hey,
look, 3 people got booted off the board. There's drama going on. No question that there's drama. I'm not saying that it's drama free. I'm just saying we're all, including me, we're all reacting to information that, in my opinion, is intentionally leaked. And again, I'm gonna talk in more detail on 83 weeks, but we'll continue to dig into this conversation until it's about midnight tonight. Once we get started, I got 3 hours. I got 3 hours on 83 weeks. I got 40 minutes with you guys.
Yeah. So I mean, even if there's no sale or what have you, right? You got to look at the cards that are play, right? And look at the history of the McMahon family. Jess McMahon was a boxing and wrestling promoter in the Northeast, right? Passes it along in some way, some form to Vince's dad, Vincent J. McMahon, right? And then Vince buys it out in the mid 80s, right? So the fact that there's no Stephanie or Shane, right? There's almost like there's not the family succession plan. You know, like we have to acknowledge that. And
why is that unusual?
Well, I guess almost negating my point is like maybe Jess and Vince Sr. didn't take it as big as Vince, and I think that's no question about that. But it's just weird because you know when you're associating that product, whether it be WWF, WWF, WWE, since the onset, there's always been a McMahon attached, and Vince is almost like the last stand.
Are you just kind of asking mostly like, is it going to be weird not being a family business anymore?
Yeah,
that's a big change.
Even if there's no
I
sale.
didn't say that that's how it would end up. You're assuming that. I'm not.
Well, let's take this question from the Landlord Harassment Channel, our top guy, Josh. What's your take on the rumors that Stephanie and Triple H don't actually want to take over when Vince moves on and wants to do other things with their lives? Have you ever seen an indication that that's the case? Besides,
I haven't seen that. I haven't heard that. I have no insight into that. It's conjecture, and it could be true. Could very well be true. I mean, just look at human nature. You know that's you have to give up your life to run that company, and maybe they're not ready to do that, or maybe they are. And this is just all conjecture and speculation. In rumor, you know, it's all rumor and innuendo. None of us know. I don't have a feel for that one. I don't know Stephanie or Triple H well enough to know what they may dream about.
Well, on one of the shows that you did this week, you talked about AEW, how this might affect them, and also whether you saw Tony Khan making a play to buy WWE. Just in the last few hours here, we have heard a dirt sheet rumor that Tony and AEW are in the running or are part of some sort of group that's being considered to buy WWE. Nicholas Blake wants to know, wouldn't you agree, Eric, it would be smart for Tony Khan to buy his competition, WWE?
Great question. And I want to answer this in a way that doesn't sound like I'm picking on anybody, because I'm not. But acquiring WWE that's a big giant move. Have we seen any indication that Tony Khan running WWE would be a good thing? Given how complex WWE is compared to AEW, it's like saying, hey, I got my uncle's really good at building custom cars. I think you really, we've got all the money in the world. Let's go buy General Motors. No, I don't see it. Now, could it happen? Sure, anything's possible. But if you really think about it, does the Khan enterprise have the experience, knowledge, infrastructure, and ability to run a company as complex as WWE? I mean, you look at AEW, their merchandising department is pro wrestling tees.
Right.
It's two different worlds. They may be in the same business, but they don't live and play in the same universe. Now, the Khans are obviously a successful family. They've got a football club in the UK. They've got the Jacksonville Jaguars. It's easy to assume, and I think correctly so, that there's a tremendous amount of high-powered talent in that company, none of whom have any experience running a wrestling company, especially one as big and complex with as many moving pieces as WWE. So, I mean, just from a purely, God, can you imagine what that would look like? I can't. But who knows? Anything's possible, man.
I can't see it on its own. I could see the Khan family being involved with like Comcast or like Endeavor or Liberty, like any of these other big pools of money that are involved. I could see them getting involved, but I can't see them owning it outright.
Comcast doesn't need a partner. Mm-hmm. If Comcast decides they want to acquire it, they're not going to be out knocking on doors looking for partners. They have they have more than enough money. They have more than enough money. And again, I'll go into this in more detail, but I think, if you look at the market, mergers and acquisitions have basically shut down since 2022, fourth quarter of 2022. Nobody's paying premiums anymore. Multiples in 18, 19, 20, 21. Yeah, you could look at your revenue or whatever it is you're looking at, and you can look at your stock value and go, okay, I want 1.5 or I want 2.5. I've seen companies sell for multiples of 6 and 7 and 8 of revenue. Not today. It's a different world.
Going back to Vince McMahon, and he's 77 years old, I believe, and obviously I think the narrative, not from me, but like maybe a lot of other people, is that maybe he's too old, that he's not with the times anymore. Do you think people using his age as that, you think is a little unfair? And I don't know, maybe you, I love to maybe hear a comparison. I don't know if there even is one, but maybe you look at somebody like a Clint Eastwood, who's like 92 years old and he's still a filmmaker. There's a lot that goes into making a movie. You look at something like a Steven Spielberg, who just won a Golden Globe for Best Director at 76 years old, and they're still kind of at the top of their game. Do you think the age thing is just a scapegoat for maybe people not liking, or excuses that they're making?
No, I think the age thing is, I think, look, I'll be the first one to tell you, I experienced it firsthand. Working with Vince McMahon in creative is a challenging process for a lot of reasons, none of which has anything to do with his age. Mm-hmm. None of it. If you were 35 years old and ran marathons as a hobby, you would have a hard time keeping up with Vince McMahon. Mm-hmm. I don't care. So the whole Vince is old and out of touch thing, you can argue that maybe creatively, because you don't like Vince's vision of what wrestling should be. It doesn't mean that he's not in control of his faculties
Yeah.
or that he's missed a beat any more than Clint Eastwood has, or Steven Spielberg has. No. I think that's internet wrestling chatter because people are unhappy with whatever they're seeing on television. So, it's because he's too old.
Yeah.
Ageism, right?
Mhm.
Right? All these people that otherwise don't like to be biased in things, and but they have no problem saying it's too old. He's out of touch. I would say the events of the last week would suggest he's far from out of touch. This motherfucker is the Sun Tzu of media.
No, that's facts. And even
Well, also
the fact that they're
considering-
the most profitable that they've ever been during. Vince has never been in his 70s before, and they're the most profitable they've ever been. So there's
So
that.
you're proving my point.
Yeah, also, as far as what women have to endure every day in the wrestling world, in the conversation of age and being too old and that kind of a thing, I think Vince can handle a few comments. It's okay. He'll survive.
Oh, I don't think it bothers him at all.
Doubt it. And maybe he deserves it just a tad. I'm just saying. Let's get to another one of our fan questions here. There are so many good ones. Barbell Book Press asks, given the vast change in media consumption and how we consume media, where does Eric see the future of Raw and SmackDown as they come up for negotiations? And I saw another question as well about how these negotiations may affect Raw and SmackDown and their TV deals. What are your thoughts on that?
I don't have any. I don't. Here's what I do know. I do know that as a media property, WWE is extraordinarily healthy globally. Extraordinarily healthy. And valuable because it's, other than the NFL or the NBA or any major sports league, it is the most powerful live action programming available today other than sports and news. Therefore, it has tremendous value. How does all of the stories that are floating around out there now affect those media rights? I think a lot of it depends on how it ends up.
Mm-hmm.
Where does this company end up? If I'm wrong, and I could very well be wrong, by the way, and there is an actual sale to a Comcast or to a Fox or to a Disney, well, obviously that affects the media rights, doesn't it? Because it'll be off the market. It won't be out. Nobody's going to be negotiating for rights. If Comcast owns it, you think they're going to say, hey, Fox, let's license. And maybe they will, by the way. It's not unusual for studios and networks to do business with each other, but I don't know. I don't know. I'd be speculating like Dirt Sheet Dave Meltzer, and I don't want to do that.
The Real Deal wants to know, who was the leak? Hashtag McMystery. That is kind of a fun aspect to all of this, is where are these rumors coming from? We all know that anyone who truly knows anything that's working behind the scenes is not talking to reporters.
And see, that's such an important thing that you said, Christy. That's what people need to realize, is that anybody that actually knows anything is not talking. And if they are, and if they do leak information, it's for a purpose. Mm-hmm. So when you hear people say, yeah, but I talked to so-and-so, or I have inside information, or I have sources that tell me, and these are high up. Anybody that's high up enough to have information that actually matters is under an NDA. Mm-hmm. and is exposed legally for leaking information that isn't supposed to be leaked, right? So I think so much of the chatter in the dirt sheets, and even guys like Fightful, PW Insider, people that I have respect for because I know they at least make a strong effort to verify and double source their information and so forth. They're not talking to anybody that has any ability to give any real insight unless they've been asked to do it.
So
I don't believe anything. I think it's all Shakespeare. I think everything that we see is Shakespeare.
No, 100%. But there was a parody account on Twitter, right? I want to say within the last decade, obviously, but they were pretty spot on. They weren't reporters or anything like that, but somebody was leaking information like, quarterly sales, new hires, releases, and what have you. So it wasn't a reporter or anything like that were looking for credibility or clout, but there have been times in the pre-podcast era where we didn't have the access to Vince McMahon that we now do have via podcasts. But there was somebody that got it pretty close.
Well, then either somebody leaked it illegally, or more than likely it was done intentionally. Because you can use dirt sheets. You could use douchebags like Dave Meltzer. You can use people to stir up the conversation in a way that benefits you. Wrestlers have been doing that for decades with Dave Meltzer. People that have their own agendas know that you can feed that stupid sumbitch anything, and he's going to repeat it without fact checking anything, because he's a lazy fuck, and he'll just spew whatever garbage he could spew because somebody, my source says. And if what his source kind of fits Dave's agenda, which has always been an anti-WWE agenda, an anti-Hulk Hogan agenda, an anti-Eric Bischoff agenda, an anti-WCW agenda, you can use a guy like Dave because everybody knows he doesn't check anything. He just runs with it. You can feed that dumb sumbitch anything and he'll go with it. And if you want something out in the public, just call Dave.
So while we're addressing some rumors, the Landlord Harassment Channel has one, and it's the WWE's actually been sold to Christy Olson.
God, I wish. Wish.
Christy, what's your first order of business?
Things would change. Bringing Stephanie back, however much she needs to get paid. If we got to bring the kids to work, whatever we got to do. Stephanie back in power.
Put the kids to work. That'd be your first.
Absolutely.
That slave labor comes in handy, brother.
Absolutely. Well, I know people have tons of questions about this potential sale. And Eric, you've spent a lot of this week talking quite a bit about it. Let's turn to AEW for a moment. I know Adam was at the show last night at the Forum here in LA. And I want to ask you, Eric, if you were to go to an AEW live show, or even when you've been there, what are the things that you look for to say, okay, they're doing a great job here?
For me, it's a crowd reaction. It's storytelling. I always, first and foremost, when I watch the product, I'm looking for cohesive story and great promos and interviews, because that's what makes wrestling work. Yeah, it's nice to have great, 5-star matches that everybody's excited about, and you have to have a great presentation. The product in the ring has to have credibility. There's no question about that. I'm not dismissing it. But what's driving the industry are characters and great story. No different than any other form of entertainment. Wrestling is not unique. It is driven by great characters and great story. But in terms of what do I see in an arena?
Yeah.
What am I looking for? I'm looking at the crowd. I'm not nearly as interested in what I see in the ring as I am in the crowd's reaction to it. And I look for you have the obvious things, right? When you get great reactions, it's easy to go, oh, wow, that worked great. But I like to watch the audience when they're watching what's going on. 6 rows deep. What are those people doing 6 rows deep? What are those people doing 10 rows deep? People sitting at ringside are right there. I mean, they're damn near in the ring. I don't really pay much attention to them because they know they're on TV. They're Pavlovian. They're doing what Pavlov's dogs do. They're reacting to stimuli because they know they're supposed to. That's not being critical. It's just fun. It's part of what's fun about being in the audience, right? Same is true at NFL games. Same is true in a lot of sports. The crowd likes to become part of the show. And you expect to see that in the first 3, 4, 5 rows because they're paying a premium for the privilege of being there, partly because they know more than likely they're going to end up on TV too. So they're part of the show. But what are the people doing that are 10 or 15 rows deep? How are they reacting to your major angles? How are they reacting to your stories? How are they reacting to the promos in the ring? Are they looking at their phones? Are they taking pictures of themselves? Go, hey, look where I am. Because if they are, they're disengaged, which means the audience at home is probably disengaged too. So I ignore the first 5 rows and I start looking a little deeper into the crowd, and I'm watching how they react to what's going on in the ring more than I'm watching the action in the ring.
Yeah.
One thing that I noticed last night that in the 2 previous AEW shows that I attended was this. I don't know if it's a nuanced thing, just at the Forum or the LA market or whatever, but it was a spot. It was like a spot crowd. The crowd reacted to spots rather than what happened in between. And in between the spots, you could hear a pin drop. And the Forum is like a 16, 17,000 seat arena, but they'd react to just the bang pow whatever, and then in between it was just lulled. And I hadn't experienced that in any other wrestling show that I've been to.
Doesn't that? And that's really interesting, because that suggests to me that the product is appealing to that segment of the audience, and I acknowledge that they're there. That segment of the television audience that appreciates the, Young Bucks, Elite, Dave Meltzer, Booker of the Year, Dirt Sheet Booker of the Year kind of product. And there is a segment of the audience that likes it. And clearly it's a big segment, right? They had a walk-up of a significant walk-up, whatever it was. And if you can believe what you read, it had about $700,000 gate. That's pretty significant for a TV taping, right? So you can't say, oh, it doesn't matter. Of course it matters. But in the broader scheme of things, when it comes to television, which is what drives wrestling, is television, the people who aren't in the arena at ringside there for the party may not be reacting the same way. And if I'm right, AEW was under 1 million once again. So Is the television audience reacting positively the same way that people in the venue are? The ratings would suggest not.
Right. Well, again, that's the thing. It was a reverberation. Like it was something exciting happened. Everybody, I mean, even in up to the nosebleeds, as well as at ringside, they were just completely engaged. And then when a rest hold happened, that's when you could hear a pin drop. And again, I was.
Yeah, but I mean, look, you talk about a rest hold, you would expect the audience to come down. It's one of the reasons you go into a rest hold is to manage the peaks and valleys, of you can't stay at a 10 the whole 2-hour period, right? You've got to go up and you got to come down. But again, I didn't watch the show. I saw clips of it, by the way. I think the production was outstanding.
Mm-hmm.
I think the quality, the production values of that show has improved 4-fold over what it was. Is it perfect? No. Is it getting substantially better? Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think Mike Mansouri's hand since the beginning of this year has been pretty clear.
Pretty clear.
Yeah.
Very obvious. Very obvious. And kudos to Tony Khan for bringing Mike in. I said it as soon as I heard the word. I think I said, Mike Mansouri may be the most valuable acquisition Tony Khan has ever made, including Sting and CM Punk and Chris Jericho or whomever, because as exciting as all that talent is, and I'm not taking away anything from any of them, right? The ability to present a product that looks like a mainstream product and increase those production values adds a tremendous value to that property. And Mansouri is as good as anybody other than maybe Kevin Dunn, and he's probably close. My hope is that Tony listens to Mike, because Mike's not only able to affect the look of the show, Mike understands storytelling. He really does. And if Mike Mansouri can have half as much influence on the creative process as he has on the production values, I think the future is very bright for AEW.
Yeah.
So, Primetime Poker wants to point out, if Christy buys the WWE, they need to make Steve Kaufmann their booker.
That would be my second move.
Second move? Okay. I I feel like I'd be better suited for a different role in a Christy Olson led WWE, but I'll take whatever job she thinks she needs from me.
You can do the YouTube too. But while we are still on AEW, let's take this question from JR, who wants to know, do you think Jade Cargill's undefeated streak will be booked into a corner like Goldberg? Of course, the most talked about undefeated streak in pro wrestling history. What do you think about
Tonka.
Jade's streak, Eric?
I don't have an opinion. I haven't watched her, so for me to have, I don't know. I have no opinion about it. The only way I could have an opinion is if I was watching it every week, and I'm not. So I mean, good for her.
Yeah.
Yeah, an undefeated streak with anybody, not just Jade Cargill, with anybody. If that's your focus and that's your strategy, eventually you're gonna have to find a way out of it, and it's going to hopefully be something that progresses either somebody new or Jade, as far as story and her character. But that's a generalization, and I just don't watch. So I don't have an opinion.
Yeah.
We will keep rooting for her. Evan here wants to know, could AEW end up like WCW? So I think the question here that I would like to ask is all this talk about a sale for WWE be something that puts an AEW sale on the table?
Can't follow that one. I'm not sure I understand.
So just because WWE is getting hyped up, going to be worth all this money, big sale over there, does that make some maybe smaller media company go, oh, is there a wrestling company that we can buy? Can we get in on all this?
I mean, I guess maybe, but I don't know. I don't think so.
No.
I don't think so. Until AEW. First of all, we don't, and I talked about this a little bit with Raj Giri.
Yes, great episode of Strictly Business earlier this week.
And Raj was a great guest. And Raj, he's had two businesses now, or one business in particular, that was very ad driven, right? So Raj understands ad sales, and in general, he understands it very, very well, probably better than I do, because he's been more recently involved in it. But the principles are kind of the same. And we went into great detail on that topic. The internet wrestling community and a lot of the news sites and the dirt sheets, and I separate legitimate news sites like Wrestling Inc. and a lot of the others, PW Insider, Fightful. There's a lot of reputable ones. They're not perfect, but they're reputable. They at least attempt to actually be journalists. And then you have the other category, that Dave Meltzer is the king of. I remember months ago, I'm reading about, I'm reading Brandon Thurston, and he's making these parallel arguments about potential AEW media rights based on the NHL and comparing ratings from AEW to NHL. And I understand the temptation to do that because it's kind of obvious, right? For somebody that doesn't really understand the industry. It seems like an obvious comparison to make. Well, if the NHL is getting lower ratings than AEW is 52 weeks a year and is getting better ratings and a better then therefore the assumption is that the AEW has enhanced media value as a result of that. It's not true, because the CPMs, the cost per thousand in the NHL is dramatically different, more than likely, than the CPMs or the value of advertising within AEW or WWE for that matter, because wrestling has a different value to advertisers than legitimate sports. Golf doesn't get a fraction of the ratings of WWE or AEW. But damn, take a look at the CPMs for the PGA. So you can't necessarily look at the obvious and come to a conclusion that's credible. If the fact is, and this is the information that none of us have, right? We get the ratings because that's public information. Can't keep that a secret. Anybody can get it. It's not that hard. You too can break ratings news just by knowing where to subscribe and sound like an expert. It's not hard. But when it comes to the ad sales component, that's privately held information. Tony's not sharing that. He's not bragging about it. Neither is TBS. And it doesn't mean that it's bad. You know, they could be doing great. I don't know. I have no inside information, and neither does anybody else that's writing about this stuff and covering it. So my point is that if, you know, AEW is getting 1 million viewers and they're doing a 0.33 in the demo, but if their ad sales division can't sell that demo because advertisers don't want to be associated with wrestling, guess what? That rating in those demos don't have the same value for an AEW as it does to the NHL, because the ad value is much higher, which means TBS, who's spending $45 million a year reportedly for the licensing rights to AEW, means they have to make more than $45 million a year to recoup their investment. If they're only able to sell $30 million a year worth of advertising in the AEW because it's wrestling, and it's not an AEW problem, it's a professional wrestling challenge. And it's always been there. WWE has done a much better job over the years of mainstreaming itself, which is why they went back to PG, so they could remain ad friendly and get higher CPMs and make more money. And that's important, because if Fox or SmackDown, or excuse me, Fox or USA is losing money hand over fist because they can't sell advertising, they're not going to be able to, WWE won't be able to command a premium licensing fee. But they are, because they've been able to serve the advertising community. And in some cases to the disdain of the wrestling audience, because what makes advertisers comfortable and makes them willing to pay a higher CPM is because it's friendly. It's advertiser friendly, which kind of means it's family friendly. And that's why when I've criticized, you know, the excessive use of blood on television, it's not because I think it's grotesque and I have a weak stomach or I just don't like it. It's because what are you telling advertisers? See, guys, people, and it's really simple. I mean, it's a little easier for me because I've been in the business. But even if you haven't, if you've ever been in sales, you know salesmen and women tend to take the path of least resistance. How can I make the most money possible with the least amount of effort? It's why good salespeople become salespeople, right? But if you're if you're in ad sales for AEW, for TBS, because AEW doesn't sell their own advertising, Turner does. So if you work in Turner ad sales and you've got a bag of tricks, you've got everything that's on the TBS network in your bag of things to sell, are you going to reach in the bag and pull out the thing that's the most controversial or the most difficult to sell? Are you going to sell the things that are the easiest to sell? That was always a big challenge for us at WCW with Turner ad sales, by the way, because historically WCW did so piss poor, and it was so not advertiser friendly that people that were representing WCW as a property in the ad sales market, they didn't even want to talk about it. They didn't want to admit they had it in their bag of tricks because it was too hard. There's a lot of easier things to sell. Now, that may be completely different now. I don't know. I'm not in Turner. But I think generally speaking, it's safe to say that wrestling has always been historically much more difficult to sell than any other genre of entertainment. So if that's still true, and if you're now Warner Discovery and you're just looking at the math and you go, wait a minute, we're spending $45 million a year for this, and how much did we have in ad sales last year? Oh, 62 million? Okay. Let's renew them and let's make sure they're happy. Or it's break even. Or maybe they're not selling $45 million a year worth of advertising and are using that program to do make goods. And a make good is if I'm that ad salesperson and I sold Chrysler, and I wouldn't work for Chrysler, but if I sold an advertiser a package during the upfronts, which is generally when that happens, the big ad buys are in the upfronts. And I've sold a big ad buy for TBS Network to a very important advertiser, and I'm halfway through the year and I'm not coming close to meeting my guarantees, because you have to meet a guarantee. You take $10 million in a commitment, you have to guarantee that you're going to deliver X amount of viewers in a demo. And if you're halfway through the year, the fiscal year, and you're looking and you're going, oh my gosh, I sold this at one, I guaranteed one level of viewership and I'm coming up short. So what do? Oh, I'm going to bonus my advertiser in as many different programs as I can to try to get that guarantee up. They're not necessarily buying AEW. Advertisers are not buying AEW. They're buying a number, and Turner is using AEW to help make good on upfront ad buys. That may still make it worth it, but it's not premium advertising. So all of those variables, and that's all they are, is variables. And it's not exclusive to AEW. The same is true in WWE. It just is. It's the nature of the business. And without knowing that one single component, my opinion, anybody's opinion, is just nothing more than rhetoric. It can be an informed opinion, but you don't know. You just don't know.
You mentioned WCW there, and some of our live audience wants to talk more about WCW. We want to thank you guys for your super chats, and Travis Johnson has this question. What are your thoughts on the 1998 WWF Street Team being at WCW shows? He's talking about using propaganda to shift perception, i.e. getting people to watch WWF instead of WCW. What did you think about that when it was going down?
I didn't even know it was going down, or if I did, it didn't mean enough for me to remember it. But it doesn't surprise me. Vince McMahon has long believed, and maybe he's right, that perception is reality. So if you can change the perception of the audience and the market, then you're affecting reality. And I'm sure that was part of it. I've seen some of the things that they did. Somebody posted it on social media, and I thought it was really funny. I
will say that probably falls more in the line of how you felt when they were taking water coolers out of Titan Tower. Yeah. Where you're like, oh, I'm doing something here.
I don't see the correlation, but okay.
Well, that you're hurting them so bad that they're sending people to the parking lot of your show.
I see the correlation. I see. Yeah, but again, honestly, when it happened, if somebody brought it to my attention, it just went in one ear and out the other, I may have chuckled about it because it really wouldn't affect anything. But I don't remember it ever happening. And if I look back at it now, because of things I've read recently, it just makes me chuckle.
I have a non-wrestling question, because we all love the non-wrestling questions. I know that obviously you've been on TV for a few decades. Have you ever been asked to be on a celebrity, like a Jeopardy or like a Hollywood Squares or anything like that? And would you do it if they asked?
The only non-wrestling show that I was asked to host was what was the name of that show? It was on E. Greg Kinnear was the host.
No.
It was a nightly show.
Do a little guest spot on The Soup?
No, I hosted it. I sat in for Greg Kinnear. I think it was Greg Kinnear was the host.
Kilborn. I think it's Greg Kilborn.
No, you're talking about Talk Soup?
Soup.
Yeah.
Around 91 to 2002.
That was huge.
Well, I did it once, and it was over Christmas, and I was asked to come in and host. I think it was Talk Soup. Yeah.
But would you ever do I don't know. I feel like the Bischoffs would be great at Celebrity Family Feud.
Truth be known, and that's a great question. Before I got promoted to executive producer, I was actively pursuing a hosting gig, and my dream at that point, not my dream, but my goal at that point was to try to get a game show. Because a game show, you tape 5 shows back to back to back to back, and you're done for the week.
Mhm.
Now you got to work like a dog, over the course of however many days it takes to film those shows. But then you're done. And it's 52 weeks a year, and it pays a lot of money. And I knew I'd be good at that, or I thought I'd be good at that, something like that, hosting that type of a show. I also was in the running for Access Hollywood when Access Hollywood launched.
You could have been the next Steve Kometko.
My agent was a woman who's still active in the business by the name of Babette Perry.
Oh yeah.
Google the internet. And I got introduced to her because I was asked to audition for that show.
But
You
you
know
had
why
been
I was
asked.
asked? Did you know why?
Because you had the
So
look.
darn good.
The hair.
Yeah, because I had the look. I look like a game show host or a weatherman. Take your pick. But, or I could have had a career at QVC. But when Access Hollywood was launched, it was an NBC property. I had developed a relationship with a gentleman by the name of Gary Considine, who was the executive producer of The Tonight Show. And I had worked with Gary and Jay Leno. And Gary knew me pretty well. We're still friends to this day. And when Gary was made executive producer and his job was to launch Access Hollywood, he's the one that called and said, "Hey, I think you need to audition for this."
Hell yeah.
What became
How
of it?
different things could have been.
I stayed in the wrestling business. I didn't get the gig.
He ended up. He ended up running
Had I
WCW.
got that gig, I would have left wrestling.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, we have to get to another one of our live chatters. Dwayne Atkinson asks, is there anybody you thought could be world champion in WCW that you didn't push? My guess is you would have done just that had you thought they could be world champion.
Yeah, I mean, there were a lot of people that had a lot of potential, but there was no like one person I went, "Oh man, that person's going to be, I could be a world champion someday," but I'm just going to ignore it.
I think they could be it. Well, of course, one more juicy question while we've got everybody watching this live here about the sale. Nathan brings this up, an actual question. When Vince retired last year, did you think this was always the plan for him to go away, lose the heat, and come back for the negotiations? Or not, and Vince is just being Vince? Which is it, Eric?
I don't know, but if I had to choose or had to make a bet, I would bet on the latter. I think this is just a series of circumstances that while nobody planned for them, there was probably a contingency plan in place. I mean, I said this again on Strictly Business. What fascinates me the most about not the most, but way up there about the story is that Vince had the foresight long ago, back in 1999, when he created and structured the shares as A shares and B shares. And he made certain that even though he was a publicly held company, at the end of the day, you can vote, but it kind of doesn't matter. And that was back in 99. And here we are in 2023, and Vince is reaching in his pocket and saying, "Yeah, you guys can do whatever you want, but at the end of the day, I've got enough control that I can force my way back in." And he did. I just think that's so fascinating. Brilliant, by the way. Because I work for Ted Turner, who put together one of the biggest media mergers at the time. AOL Time Warner Turner. It was a massive media merger. And because he didn't do what Vince McMahon did, Ted Turner woke up one day after it was over and realized he only had 3% of the controlling shares, and nobody wanted to hear what he had to say. He was basically a figurehead within the company that he created and took public. And after the merger was all done and the smoke cleared and everything was over, Ted had a nice little office, but nobody talked to him. Vince did the exact opposite.
He did. Well, guys, before we get to our very special private after party, and you guys should all go sign up at adfreeshows.com and get access in the next few minutes here if you are not. Let's do one last super chat from our friend Mick Mac, who wants to know, Eric, why do French people eat snails?
Escargot.
I don't know why.
They don't like fast food. All right. He also wants to know when you're getting a haircut, but I think you look fabulous as always.
I do need a
recently
haircut,
cut.
don't I? I do need a haircut. My wife told me the same. My wife told me the same.
And, I learned so much from her last year about how to make your New Year's resolution stick. Let's just take a chance to tell everybody to go listen to Mrs. B's podcast.
There you
We're
go.
talking shift. If you want to change your life for 2023, and if you want to hear more from Eric, like I said, go sign up at adfreeshows.com for our special Top Guys private after party. If you have joined us on the 83 Weeks YouTube channel, thank you so much. And thank you for your super chats tonight. Make sure that you are subscribed by hitting that big old red button. And if you click the bell too, you will get notified every time that Eric goes live. That's what he's doing now. You can tap in and ask Eric anything you'd like about WWE, Vince, or anything else. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with us. We do this Thursdays at 5 p.m. Pacific time right here on the 83 Weeks channel. And we will see you next week for Buff Bagwell. Top Guys, stay tuned. Have a good week.
All right, I'm going to take a quick break. I'll be right back.
All right, stay tuned for Buff Bagwell unless some other breaking news happens.
True. That's what I thought is exactly. Glad I'm not the only one. Thank you, George.